Alright, I'm committing the idea of doing this, right? Because if I don't do this now, I basically am never going to talk about it, and that's just how it is. So, we're forcing the idea, damn it, like I'm forcing basically a condom in your salad. I don't know why, but we're doing so. But essentially, yeah, I do need to talk about JSX4 as a actual show, and do it in an actual video that's not an episode, because I've said 4 or 5 months back that I wanted to talk about it a lot more, but the only reason why I'm so terrified to do so, and why it's honestly the most terrifying topic on the channel for me to do, is because I don't know how it's going to do viewership wise, and that's always been the thing that's kind of holding me back from doing videos like this, because of how weird that series is and how out there and how original that is, because not many of you guys have sat down and watched the show and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just kind of like, do I talk about it? Do I not? When is a good time? And it really feels like there is never a good time. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. And basically, I want to force out as much information as I can about this show, as much as possible, because if I don't, then you'll never get to see backstories of characters I've been said I wanted to do, but I never really did because of just how, how I perceive this channel and how people kind of perceive it. I will never really talk about things like powers and how it actually works and stuff like that, and all that sort of jazz, because again, never really found the right time to make those sort of videos. And again, it's just that fear, just like, do people know what this is? Do people even care? And that's just kind of like the thing that kind of beats me in the head over and over again about this type of video, or at least the topic of these videos, right? And that's just how it is. But we're gonna again commit to it today, because the crazy part is I know where some of the stuff goes. I know what some events happen. I know where the ending goes. I know where some things in the ending happens at. I just don't know where to exactly place all this stuff together and just things in general like that, right? There is plenty of moments where writing this show has been some of the biggest challenge, is just straight up the intricate little details to add in, because I'm so hell-bent and focused on trying to make sure the story makes sense, that everything is not necessarily so, I guess, boring when it comes down to it, and trying to make it like as entertaining as I can, while also not necessarily just getting too lost in the sauce of actual seriousness of the story, while also remembering that, hey, it's also an ecchi, there's little things that do happen and stuff like that too. By far, I think if people paid attention to the story, you wouldn't know it's not necessarily like your regular anime story, right? Because obviously there's things that the main character does that regular anime characters don't really do all the damn time. Smashing different characters. Does that happen a lot of times in different shows where harems are involved? Not necessarily. There's some that do it, but not a lot of them that actually does. And Jay just go balls to the wall, smashing to bits any woman that's in his path. That's just how it is, and that's just where we kind of go. Another thing is just the fact that the power scaling is ridiculous, because Kaneko is at universal level. She could destroy a universe when it comes down to it, but I never really fully explained how this whole thing kind of is. I have been flip-flopping on things like the multiversal essence, because I still don't know exactly what the hell it actually is to a high-end degree, even though I explained it quite a few times, but I still never locked down on a serious idea of where it actually is, and all that sort of jazz. It's been hell for me to figure all this stuff out. And another thing that hasn't been helpful is just the loss of multiple Twitter accounts throughout the years that has wrote the story, which has details that I don't remember anymore because of literally, it's not there, right? And I hardly ever look at my own series because of just how it's kind of put together sometimes. It's the best I can do. So sometimes it's just a chopped up mess of just, damn it me, what the hell are you actually doing? And it's like, bro, how the hell are you expecting to get people into the story, to get people to care about your characters and how fine they all are, if you don't really talk about it, if you don't really explain the different things that goes on to this series that needs answers to it, right? That, try not to spoil too much, but give people enough an idea to know what the hell is actually happening. And that is just how it is. So I want to try to lock down on a few ideas in this video, and hopefully, this will be a better understanding for me and a better understanding for you that might want to get into this story and stuff like that as well, right? There's also an idea of just straight up just doing a recap of things that has happened within the first really big arc of the story, because I haven't really done a giant recap like that. So I need to do something like that in the near future, because what the hell am I doing? That's how people can get into the story as well. So there's also that. And then even thinking about the damn teaser I put out yesterday, like, people that follow the story is gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's the Overseer, I can't believe it. But then other people are gonna be like, who the freak is this? What's an Ultidex? And all that sort of stuff. How am I gonna introduce these concepts? I don't know what half of this shit is, man. I just subscribed yesterday. And I don't blame you. So first off, let's start off. Multiversal Essence. What the hell is that? What is it? Why is it? Everything about it. The Multiversal Essence, from what I said during Saki and Fu's encounter, is basically the free will that became of like the light and darkness of those two beings, right? And what ended up happening was that they didn't know exactly how much darkness should be in the multiverse, how much light should be in the multiverse, basically how good and bad kind of is, how much balance is there. And essentially, the Ultidex, as you now know, the Overseer, is basically someone that was getting tired of this whole thing and basically took the free will out of those two and just threw it out into the multiverse as it is, right? Just essentially just like, you know, let mortals figure it out, let them just use the free will for whatever, and then we'll see how it kind of goes from there, right? And ultimately, because people have the free choice to do what they want to do, Despair also gets the chance to grow, and it grew to a point where it's basically a concept that is the equivalent to light and dark in how it is, because light and dark is within all things. It's a very powerful concept in many different stories, and it's a very powerful concept in real life as well, and so it grows just as much as those two things. Yeah, that's kind of a big problem, considering how we need light and dark in everyday life. Imagine just needing despair to kind of also be a thing, and really applying that to how much you see of that constantly, right? That's just basically an idea of how you kind of, you know, interpret that, I would say. Now, obviously, when it comes down to it, they easily realize that there is a problem with, you know, the multiversal essence kind of existing for mortals to kind of have. So they had to figure out a plan, or at least the Light Guardians had to figure out a plan to do what they need to do to kind of halt its, you know, despairness to kind of be around everything. Whether it was Nyx creating Shion to basically, you know, kind of do something with it, but it didn't really work out in the way that it was supposed to, or at least it didn't have the chance to act out that sort of plan to take care of despair. Then you had the Guardians of Despair, which is basically this group of these different individuals that comes through and supposed to fight against despair. But then obviously, as we know in the story right now, Sarutomi killed two of them and left one alone, and that's why basically Shitoya is trying to kill Sarutomi for that, because of the things that, you know, she did. And that's just ultimately how it is, and that's kind of where we are in that current moment of this arc now. But the multiversal essence just doesn't go about just by free will. It also is the reason why Blue and, you know, Shoko and Konako and Madaka and all these different characters and dream characters exist in that reality of where Jay is at, right? It is that damn powerful. It's why also, you know, back in the past, Lamine tripped about Jay kind of using that power, and she knew what it was, and the only reason why I gave her the knowledge of why she know what it is, because she's, you know, traveler in Genshin, traveled to these different worlds, so maybe they might knew something about it as well, but she never went into it, because at the time I didn't know exactly what it was myself. Essentially, Jay is manipulating the essence, which is basically the power of the gods, essentially, in some shape or form, to create life, right, on some Rhine Daughter type beat. And essentially, with him doing that, he kind of is in a league of his own, whether or not he even realizes that. Now, why does Jay have the ability to manipulate the essence even long before he had the powers that he currently do? Well, I would argue, and if I had to come to a conclusion of anything, it's because he was already sort of chosen to kind of wield that sort of thing, right? Like, if you remember in the beginning of the Genedex series, where Jay kind of just was in the Danganronpaverse, put on some of these glasses, and then was trapped in this weird place, and just kind of feel like he was getting pulled apart in some shape or form, and the light was there to kind of protect them, to send them to that world that we currently are in. Well, that kind of is already him being chosen for in that being in that position. Like, yes, Samugi's ability is definitely a part of the reason why he was able to use it in some shape or form, but he was also already kind of chosen to kind of carry out to be able to use the essence in whatever way possible. Now, I won't try to fully explain all this stuff yet because I don't want to try to explain it here, and then I could easily implement that into the story, and that could be a way for people to be interested in it. But the multiversal essence is definitely one of the most powerful things that do exist in this universe, or at least in this multiverse, I should say. Now, when it comes down to the multiversal essence as well, there is a major ass drawback for Jay using it so damn much to bring characters from one world to the current world that he is in and stuff like that, and just using it in general. There is probably other ways you could definitely use the essence too if you are skilled enough and have the know-how, which I don't know right now, but we'll figure it out eventually in the future. But there is a major ass drawback to using it too damn much, and I already know what it is, but I won't necessarily explain that because I think that's a good place to put that for a story. So just know you can't just freely use that shit, otherwise it's gonna mess up some things that you wasn't even intending to mess up. Now, I will commit to this idea though, is that if you want to use the multiversal essence, you have to be blessed by the Overseer, the Ultra Dex. And when it comes down to it, not many people get the chance to use that, right? Like, Nyx obviously gets to use that, you know, the Light person gets to use that, which I'm still don't know the full name of how I wanna name that character. The other two characters that appeared with the Ultra Dex in that teaser, Zeraday and, you know, Stardust, they get to use that power as well, right? They just don't abuse it or just overly use it like a lot of other people, Jay in particular, you know, does when it comes down to it. And again, not many people get to use that because the Overseer basically has to be the one to give it out freely for that person to use. So yeah, I think that's where the multiversal essence kind of lies right now, where it kind of is, and I don't know if I want to mix it with something else, but we'll see how that kind of goes. I'll debate and think about that as we kind of go along. The next thing I want to talk about is concepts, which I'll be honest, slightly am inspired by just Persona in general. I'm not gonna say here a lie, it kind of is inspired by Persona, more so Persona 3, but you know, just Persona in general. Essentially, the reason why I said things like, oh, the concept of the anima, the concept of Suyo, in that teaser not too long ago, is essentially because that's kind of the reason as to why everything is kind of happening with Despair right now. People believe in the concept of Despair so much in the multiverse that we kind of have, and it became its own big ass concept that's equivalent to Light and Dark when it comes down to it, and that's just a big ass issue, you know? So obviously, you know, kind of seeing that gives it a lot of power, and it's like, alright, so I guess if we believe in something a lot, I guess that would be like, you know, equivalent of giving it so much power that to the point it could be actually a threat to many different people, or it could be a help to many different people, depending on what kind of concept you use. Anything could actually be a concept. It could be the concept of pain that could be, you know, to a high-end level. It could be the concept of insanity. It could be the concept of just straight up rage. You know, there's many different, you know, things that exist. If it exists, it could be a concept, and if people have a over reliance on it, or just have a big reliance on that sort of thing, then yeah, it could be something that could basically reach out to the levels of something like Light and Dark and stuff like that too. Typically concepts don't usually get to that point, but some reason Despair is like that, and we don't really have a giant reason as to why. It just is for some reason, and that's just how it is. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell is the concept of the Ultra Dex? Like, what do they harbor? They are the concept of everything. They are basically, as in the name, ultimate. They are just the peak of everything. They know everything that is, they know everything that will be, and everything that hasn't been. That's just how they are. They essentially are a deity, the ultimate deity of all the deities that ever will and ever has existed. That is just where they ultimately are, right? So that leads her to kind of be a character that doesn't do much, right? I'll keep it very much that. If you think you're going to see the Ultra Dex really throw down with every bit of power that she actually has, I'll give you a hard warning right now. She will not do anything like that. And that's kind of the whole damn point of her character to a point, right? She's really here to observe, to see how Jay kind of is, how he's going to act, and things like that. She will not step in unless she feels like it is necessary or it is time to demonstrate something. That is the only times where she will actually step in. Other than that, Jay's doing whatever by himself. That is essentially how it is. She's just going to be there to kind of observe, to watch, to kind of see what he kind of does. And that's essentially how it is. Now, the other two by her, you know, they'll have a role to play at some point in time whenever I figure it out. But her herself, she will not necessarily jump into any battle. She will not necessarily jump into any problem unless she feels like she can. So she basically is going to be observing, maybe giving a bit of advice here and there, maybe sometimes jumping in if she feels like it. But that's really how she's going to be operating the entire time. Now, don't get me wrong, we are going to see her fight at some point in time. We are going to see her just straight up throw hands and do whatever needs to be done. And we are going to see her be in combat, obviously, right? But when it comes down to it, she doesn't have to be. She doesn't have to whatsoever. And there's definitely some things I will put in place for that character, but ultimately she just, you know, God, essentially. She's just basically the ultimate thing of all the ultimate things that's in the universe. It's kind of like how when people believe in real religion and stuff like that too, it's kind of like how you go through your life and you don't really see anything kind of changing up and you have to change things by your own hands. And, you know, I guess like whatever deity you believe in, it's kind of just there to kind of guide you in a way or give you advice in a way. That's kind of the Ultidex's job. That is essentially all they will do. If Jay makes a bad thing happen, she's not going to say anything about it or really just really be like stepping in to stop it. Or if something really hard happens that he needs to fight against, she's not going to really step in too damn much when it comes down to it. And that's just, again, her job and her role. And honestly, even I can kind of imagine the other two beside her is also not going to really step in to that high an extent unless it's absolutely necessary. All I will say is that because of the Ultidex's existence and what is at stake when it comes down to despair, she will step in a little bit. Like if Jay were to, let's say, die or something like that, he's not going to fully die. He's going to come back because the Ultidex is going to catch him when he falls. That's why I said the very specific phrasing of that thing, right? Or the reason why he's able to unlock his abilities and have the power purification is because that's her power. That's the power of all this sort of stuff. Basically, anybody that has ever received the power purification in the past before is harboring her power, right? And while she doesn't necessarily choose herself, the power kind of chooses who gets that power whatsoever and all that sort of stuff. She still will help guide whoever needs to be guided and, you know, do whatever needs to be so that they can actually win the battle against despair and do what needs to be done. Like, that is all the Ultidex do. She basically is like, here's your power, now I'm gonna leave you to it. And that's essentially all that she does, right? That is literally all she does. And while, yes, I'll put this out there as well, yes, she can very much see the future if she wants to, but she chooses not to. And the reason for that is because she doesn't want to be spoiled on what ends up happening. She has good faith that maybe things will work out, but she doesn't necessarily want to see the future if it actually does, and wants to be pleasantly surprised if it does happen, and wants to be surprised if it doesn't happen. And that's just how she kind of operates. But that's all I'm willing to say about the Ultidex. The last thing I want to talk about real quick is the Dream Girls, because obviously those are the characters that I really want to promote hard on the channel mostly, and I want people to genuinely give a damn about, honestly, because they are fine baddies. You can't tell me that I didn't create some fine baddies when it comes down to it. And when it comes down to it, I think the biggest thing that is really like something that we haven't really focused at all on is dreams, just entirely. Like, why do dreams come true in this world for him? Like, why do they exist as living real deal people? You know, what is the whole thing with the elemental goddess, and why do they have the whole thing with dreams and such, if you remember that bit of lore, right? Like, what's good with dreams and stuff like that? Because that's a concept we haven't really like ultimately talked too much about. Blue's just kind of here. She kind of exists just to kind of exist. And that's literally about it. Other characters that come from Jay or come from the other Dream Girls essentially kind of exist just because they can exist. and that's basically it. No one really explains why they kind of exist or how they kind of be there. You know, no one really talks about that. So it's like, okay, what the hell is going on here? And it's a bit weird that they're just kind of existing with all these other characters. Like, at least the other characters have a reason to exist, right? Yeah, you could also chalk it up to the multiversal essence and stuff, but that doesn't fully explain how do dreams come to be and stuff like that, right? So that's obviously something that we gotta focus on at some point in time in the future. Like, some details about them is very obvious as to why they have certain things, like why is their powers despair related, or why do they transform into beings of despair when it comes down to it. And that's very much easily because of their past, because of how much shit they all went through when it comes down to it. Like, again, things like Lou getting molested by her aunt. Then you have Symphony, who was just basically getting, hard-r'd by everybody, getting sold off into slavery, essentially. You have Aoki, which, a little bit of spoilers, I guess, basically did a bit of, like, crushing of some kids on accident. That is as far as I will say on that one. Then you have Shoko, who was also, getting molested by her own parents and stuff like that. Yukari ended up seeing her mom getting molested right in front of her and killed off after they used her like that. There's a lot of different things that happen to them, and yes, of course they're gonna lean into the power of despair, because that's where they draw their strength from, their trauma, in the worst possible way, right? But ultimately, it's not gonna stay that way. As Yukari kind of demonstrated with the whole Ruby arc, essentially you saw her get rid of her despair version of herself. She really hasn't popped back up ever since then, because she just departed ways from her. So ultimately, it's kind of like, alright, so you can get rid of it, but like, how is that all gonna come down into play? How is that like something to kind of work on? Like, how is that all possible? That's still stuff I have to really sit down, think about, and explain. And I think one of the biggest swerves in this entire story, or at least of these characters, is Blue. Y'all love Blue, but also I don't know shit about Blue, if I'm being honest, right? I know her backstory, I know what it actually is and how it would be, but I don't know what her power actually is, even now, right? The only thing I've said is that with, Shu kind of coming into play, is basically that, oh, her power is undefined. Basically, it's not necessarily a known thing of what it is. Shu knows what it is, I don't. Which is crazy. How does a character know something that the creator of the damn story don't know? I don't get it. But ultimately, we don't know what Blue's actual power is, because really thinking about it, it's rejection. She rejects things, and she can also release things as basically like a buff to her. But why, right? What is the deal here? Is that really what's going on? Is it just simply reject and release? Is it something else that we don't really know? Like, what actually is the thing? Why could she break reality like when she fought Shoko that one time when she was in her despair state? We don't necessarily know, right? And it's been a question that's been on my brain for literal years now, and I still don't have an idea as to what to give Blue without trying to overly overpower her in the worst possible way, so it's kind of like a hard thing. I can't take back what happened. I can't take back what happened with her breaking reality. I can't take that back. I have to commit to it now because it's a thing, and this is where the resourcefulness of my writing is going to have to come into play. So that's just ultimately how it is. It's kind of like when I had made the video talking about the power scaling of different characters, and then someone in the comments was like, so does that mean Kaneko is like universal now? And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't think that through. So essentially, I have to kind of think about how do I want to go about that. And I think the easiest way for that, at least in particular when it comes out to Jay's purified state and how he kind of goes into these different forms or whatever, that he will eventually get another one soon. But when it comes down to it though, the best way to explain it is because Jay has not really been in fights like these ever in his real deal life. Essentially, he don't necessarily know how powerful he can actually get. Yeah, he's at universal level when it comes on to purification. It can destroy a universe, but does he know how to do all that? No. At best, he can probably destroy a continent. That's probably the best he can get. He can't even destroy a planet, he can destroy a continent. Then when he gets into maybe another form, he might be able to destroy a galaxy. Maybe in another form, then he finally be able to destroy the universe, right? And all that sort of stuff. then, you know, as he kind of trains up and maybe learns a lot more, he can destroy probably dimensions, infinities, times, multiple times over. We don't necessarily know. He don't really know until he actually starts training for it, right? I don't know how far that training is actually going to go, but we will ultimately see. And that's just how it is. It's going to just really depends on how much Jay can actually believe in himself to actually do it, and how much he actually puts into his training to make it happen. So that's just how it is. But overall, because I think I spoke enough, I think we'll end it here. But overall, there's a lot of things in this series I did not necessarily think through, right? Even when it comes down to things like how do these characters use their powers and stuff like that. Somebody once said, is it like thought process and stuff like that? And I'm like, kinda, but also not really. It's more like willpower than anything. If I'm gonna just straight up be honest with you, if they want to will something into existence, they can. It's just gonna come through whether or not they can actually do it and how the power kind of acts, right? And I still don't necessarily know how to go about that. The only person I could clearly tell you who is on more of a thought process type of timing is Saki, and that's because I wrote her story before. You know, before this story, there's a whole nother story where she's in, where she comes from, where I have the power scaling all packed down and stuff like that, and what her ability actually is, which at some point in time in the near future I'm probably gonna have to talk about that too. And I don't want to give out too much information about that story because obviously I haven't, one, finished it, and then two, I don't want to just jump onto that because there's a lot of spoilers in that story that I wanted to talk about and show you guys and make and create one damn day. So, you know, there's things in that, but ultimately, you know, I don't necessarily know exactly where everything in the greater bits of detail kind of goes. I don't know exactly how everything is going to line up in the future for this story, but I am trying my damn best to piece everything together, to figure everything out, and hopefully tell a good cohesive story enough to kind of get you guys to A, if you never checked it out before, check it out, and then B, hopefully still continue to tell a story that people actually genuinely care about. Which I feel like we're losing a lot of ecchi also in this story too, because, you know, there's been like a lot of serious stuff more than there has been anything that's been fun and lewd, and hopefully once this fight is over, you know, we can basically go into that a bit again, because I kind of miss writing stupid stuff, honestly, when it comes down to the story. Still matters into the grand scheme of things, but I still miss it. I ain't gonna sit here and lie. So that's just something, hopefully, that's what I'm mainly looking forward to after finishing the battle. It's just like, alright, well, let's put them in stupid scenarios, because they deserve it after all this bullshit that they went through, and I already know how this all is gonna end anyway. So it's like, let's just go ahead and get that done. That's why I'm kind of like, man, I really wish I had the time to finish this before the year ends. I don't know if I will finish it before the year ends, but we're gonna try something. So that's just how it is. But yeah, hopefully though you did enjoy this one. If you are someone that wanted questions or had questions and you wanted some answers, hopefully this video cleared some of that stuff up. I'm gonna try to remember the stuff I said in this video as well, because it is damn important. And yeah, definitely it is a lot of stuff to kind of take in, and a lot of stuff that you will forget when you're writing a story as well. And it's good to make videos like these because you don't really remember everything, and you're trying to remember everything, but it's not really an easy time to keep up with everything, right? Like, did you forget that Jay has a sister in this show? I forgot that it was Monica for a good minute. I haven't brought her back up because I haven't had a reason to. So there's also that. So yeah, kind of forgot about Monica, high key. So that's a bit unfortunate. But yeah, that's essentially just how it is for me. But hopefully still, you know, I can still tell a good story. Hopefully people will just enjoy it for what it is, right? I'm never going to stop writing that story, even if it doesn't get any sort of viewership at all. You know, I'm just going to keep doing what I need to do when it comes down to it, and try to hopefully tell a story that people back, you know, once the story is done and, you know, they can actually see what everything is, they could actually be like, all right, this was actually pretty damn peak from this guy, you know. And hopefully that's what people will perceive it once things get done, and just how the story kind of goes along the lines of everything, right? That's just how it is for me. But that's really all I want to say for this one, so hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And until next time, boy Jay, sign off. Have a blessed day.